What is up, winning team? Hello, everybody. Today we'll be continuing in this here book from none other than L. Ron Hubbard, the father of Scientology, or as I prefer to call him, the god of Scientology. And we're reading the Dianetics, the Evolution of the Science, and we're going to be reading from chapter 3 today. So if you don't know about this, there's a whole Scientology playlist on my channel. Check it out, and you'll see all the rest of the chapters before in the intro. We've done videos all the way through. This is very wordy. There's a lot of yapping. There's a lot of just unnecessarily overly intelligent vocabulary. So you will probably want to go back and look through those videos before we continue with this one. But today we're going to be reading Demons of the Mind in chapter 3. Shout out again to you guys, because of course it was one of you guys who sent me this book in the post. And we're just going to get straight into it. We're just going to get straight into it and see what L. Ron Hubbard has in store for us today while we dismantle the web of lies that is Scientology. So, for a long time and with many, many people, attempts were made to unlock the riddle. What caused hypnotism? What did it do? Why did it behave unpredictably? So, let's just go ahead and start with this. He has gone out of his way to overwhelm us with scientific knowledge, scientific vocabulary, in order to create a basis for us to believe that everything he's going to say is going to be intelligent and completely based on science. I've said this to you guys already, that this is something that people in Scientology are trying to convince all of us of. When I went to both of the places I went to for Scientology, of course, they went out of their way to say, this is all science-based. This isn't just airy-fairy malarkey. Which is what makes me the best to be reading through this, to be honest, because I am indeed obviously a scientist. I teach science as well as we speak. I love that for me. But also, I'm a believer in the things that are the supernatural. So I feel like I can give an alternative perspective maybe to others who sit more on one side than the other. So what caused him to, what did it do? Why did it behave unpredictably? That's interesting. And who says I'm behaving unpredictably as well is the other question I want to ask, because where is that basis coming from? Because maybe it's behaving predictively based on what it actually is, if it's something to actually be believed in. Examination was made of hypoanalysis. It sounds good in the text, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work for several reasons, first among them being that you can't hypnotize everybody. Further, it works only occasionally, even when a person can be hypnotized. So hypoanalysis was buried along with the water cure of Bedlam and the prefrontal lobotomy and the demon extraction techniques of the shamans of British Guiana, and the search for the key which would restore a mind to normal was continued. Okay, so it's basically saying that, again, all these examples of what I believe, from my understanding, things that are supposed to be somewhat supernatural in nature that have been looked at, but that we can't trust in, or we can't use as our solution to get our brains, these quantum machines, back to their best state, where they are. What is this phrase he used? It was the optimum computing machine. We're not in our optimum state. That's what he's basically saying. He's saying our brains are not currently in their optimum state. They are the optimum computing machine. So how do we get back to that? How do we get back to where we started? Which is the complete basis of all the stuff he's saying, right? Humans are good with evil added. We have this reactive mind that's a result of everything that happened to us, with the first, most traumatizing one being us being born in itself, that we have to go back and remove from our reactive mind so that we can be who we truly are, which in this case is the optimum computing machine. So that's what all of this is all about. But hypnotism wouldn't stay quite dead. Narcosynthesis seemed a good lead until some cases were discovered which had been cured by narcosynthesis. So let's look into what this narcosynthesis is, because let's not forget, he was very clear to say that the only reason you would not understand what is going on in this book is if you've not gone to check every single word that you do not understand. And that's why this book, I think, I was saying before, the definition section is actually longer than the other part, if I'm not mistaken. Let's have a look. So we're looking for narcosynthesis. Aha! Narcosynthesis brought about by drugs, whereby a patient undergoes psychotherapy while affected by such drugs and in a deep sleep. Narco is short for narcotic and means a drug that produces hypnosis. Synthesis, in this sense, means the combination of separate elements of sensation or thought into a whole. The name was created by psychiatrists using the drugs during World War II, attempting to rebuild, synthesize the disintegrated or broken down soldier. That is concerning. As a mathematician, mathematician, as a scientist, that is really concerning, because to me, that's not my understanding of synthesis. But then again, this is his definition, and he was very clear that if you want to understand what he's talking about, we must look at it from the perspective of the definitions that's in the book. So that's what we're doing. They reworked, so I'll read that sentence again. But hypnotism wouldn't stay quite dead. Narcosynthesis seemed a good lead until some cases were discovered which had been cured by narcosynthesis. They were reworked with the technique just to discover what had occurred. Narcosynthesis sometimes seems to fix a man up to his war neurosis, could rise to even greater heights at some future date. Okay, I see what we're trying to say here, because if you remember, so it's interesting to me how he like, even in his definitions, and this is why I have an issue when it comes to L. Ron Hubbard and why I refer to him as a god. And in terms of what a god is, to my understanding, which is an influential, all-knowing, perfect figure that can tell us exactly what we should be thinking about everything and anything, right? Because as well as him telling us stuff, he's also telling us his own definitions that are not necessarily the definitions that you might find if you go and check Merriam-Webster or the Cambridge Dictionary or whatever type of dictionary you prefer to look at. So it's like he's controlling everything about what you think about everything, if that makes sense. And that is something I think that people don't necessarily realize, because if you're not into science, if you're not into this type of world, you don't realize how often it's just another human's words based on another human's words. Because people be like, oh, how can you read the Bible when the Bible was just someone's words that somebody said? I'm like, that's the same as science. Science is exactly the same. if we're gonna call it that. Now, I don't obviously think the Bible is the same in that way, but you guys, you get the gist. He goes, no, that is not entirely fair. It's produced slightly higher results than a magic healing crystal in the hands of an Australian medicine man. So what he's saying is this narcosynthesis thing, not only does it help to potentially bring you back to a better state from your broken down state as seen in World War II, which we just read about in his definition, which he also just referenced here as well, you know, kind of giving us the twofold confirmation to make it all seem more believable. But he's also saying that it produced slightly higher results. So we've come back to a state that's actually better than what we started with. And then again, he's gone on to reference another form of what I would class as witchcraft, Australian medicine man, a magic healing crystal in the hands of an Australian medicine man. So see how he keeps partnering up this science, scientific facts, examples, studies. In World War II, we cured these because of this and the science, whilst also like lacing it with this other understanding, which is what I think he actually wants you to get to, which is why even in Scientology, as the Scientologists will say, the ones who have been into it a lot, they always say that what was it? I think it was Apostate Alex said something, and he said something to the effect of, how did he put it? He said something to the effect of that, like there's certain parts of Scientology that you can't be told until a certain point when you're ready, because they believe that if you do, like, all this stuff can happen. So yeah. Anyway, it seemed to do something beyond what it was supposed to do, and that something beyond was bad. Here was another wild variable, a piece of the puzzle of insanity's cause. We knew what man was doing. He was surviving. Somehow, some way, he occasionally became irrational. Where did hypnotism fit into this? Why did drug hypnotism affect people so adversely at times? These people one met and worked with did seem to be trapped somehow by something which modern methods almost never touched. And why did whole nations rise up to slaughter nations? And why did religious zealots carry a banner and a crescent across 3/4 of Europe? People behave as if they've been cursed by something. Were they basically evil? Was social training a thin veneer? Was the evil curse a natural inheritance from the tooth and claw animal kingdom? Was the brain ever capable of rationality? Hypnotism and narcosynthesis, unpredictable radicals, refused for a time to divulge answers. So this is really interesting. Like, I don't know how this guy thinks. What I do think, he's kind of pandering to this thing about us as humans, which is that any type of, as humans, like as people, this is just my observation. I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to tell you guys I'm absolutely not God, and I'm actually absolutely not somebody you should idolize or look up to. But I do believe that there is this thing that as humans, we tend to veer and enjoy messages about us where it's not us that's the problem, but something else that could have happened, or some other influence, or something we had no control over that has created these defects in the human mind and body. So all of this, what was the social training? What was the evil curse? Like this idea of a curse. It's like, oh no, the reason why the world is a bad place isn't because we have free will and we use our free will poorly, which is what the Bible would suggest, which is exactly what the Bible suggests in Genesis, right? Instead, it's, oh, there is some other kind of something else that must have had to happen. This unspecified event where we all veered off the right path that was not been specified as of yet from L. Ron Hubbard, nor have I heard any Scientologist be able to tell you what this event was. Maybe it's this evil curse malarkey and all this stuff he's throwing out there. Out of orbit again, without tools with which to work, it was necessary to hark back to the techniques of the Kayan shaman of Borneo, amongst others. Their theory is crude. They exorcise demons. All right. We postulated that man is evil, that the evil is native. Then we ought to be able to increase the civilized veneer by planting in him more civilization using hypnotism. So the patient usually gets worse. That postulate didn't work. So basically, this is like the most obvious thing ever. But basically what he's saying is, we considered obviously that man is just evil. And then we try to end up, if we can civilize man, which I find interesting. It's another one of these underlying prideful things that comes from a lot of folks, I have to say, in the West, of like looking at other, as he would call them, cultures that are primitive. Not, what is his version? Is it primitive or civilized? I can't remember. And thinking, well, if we civilize things more, we're going to put humans more on a better, good path to being good. But I personally don't think, by the way, that there is that those two things can be true, because civilization has nothing to do with good and evil. You can be the most civilized evil person and you can be the most primitive good person, if you will. So I kind of feel like that as a whole was already due to fail. I don't know why we needed to research that, but at least we did. And he says, interestingly, not only does it not change it, it makes the person actually worse. Which again, what is this what's the word? Analysis. What are the terms? What are we looking for? How are we quantifying what makes someone better and what makes somebody worse? You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, to like in the Bible, this is why I trust in the Bible. God is very clear, like, you shall know them by their fruit, the fruit of the Spirit of God, the fruit that God is in your life, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Like, there's specific things that you can look at that will tell you that this is, God is identifying his people and what he sees as godly and non-godly. And I know for a fact, because we talked about this, because there's the interview of L. Ron Hubbard in Zimbabwe. You guys can go and watch the interview for yourself. It's the video titled something like L. Ron Hubbard says Zimbabwe is going to be the first, he wants it to be the first Scientology country. And in there, when asked what is good and evil, he says, whatever good and evil is to everybody else, which, as I've said many times, and I'll continue to say, is not something we can use. It's not even a scientific way of doing stuff, because that's not quantifiable. That means we're all going to come out. If you go and ask even 100 scientists to watch, like, let's say a TV program and rate from 0 to 10 how good and evil all the characters are, the numbers are going to come out differently. Now, in modern science today, what would actually happen is after all those numbers are probably taken in, then somebody will find an average and then will say that on average, this is what the levels of good and bad are of the people. But again, another 100 different group of people might say something differently. Another different 100 group of people might say something differently. So that's why I'm just trying to point out, by the way, I love science and I will be doing science for the rest of my life. It's literally one of my loves in this life. I'm just pointing out that sometimes with a lot of this so-called scientific thinking, it's fraud when you don't actually think about the practical way of how are we actually evaluating this stuff? Like, how are we quantifying this? Just saying. Anyway, provisionally, let's postulate that man is good and follow its conclusions. And we suppose something such as the Borneo shaman's toe has entered into him, which directs him to do evil things. Man has believed longer that demons inhabit men than man has believed they did not. We assume demons, we look for demons one way or another, and we found some. Now, I just want to go ahead and add here that, yes, this is true, and this is something that I find really fascinating about the world we live in today, is that for much longer, for hundreds and thousands of years, our ancestors believed in the things of spiritual nature. And L. Ron Hubbard, for me, is exactly the reason why I think we should believe in these things rather than not. Because think about this. In a scenario where these types of entities actually exist, these supernatural figures, think about this. Just think about this as a concept. Not saying you have to believe it, but think about it. Who has to benefit off of majority of people not knowing about that? the small majority that does know, because they're always going to be ahead, right? They're going to always be having the things that we don't have and being ahead of where we're at. So it actually makes sense for, and this is what I believe actually happens in the world, that a lot of these people, we'll be like, I don't know how these rich and famous people or these like whatevers have got to where they're at and have all this power. It's like, yeah, because they're hiding this huge thing that's actually still there, visible outside in the rest of the world. It's only in the West where people don't really believe in this stuff anyway. And you go to other countries, if you go to the South Americas, if you go to the Asias, if you go to Africa, if you go to a lot of places, people believe in these spiritual things as we speak today, here and now. So I just want to point that out. Yeah, he's right. And that's why I say he's very intelligent, because he knows when to agree with certain things and when to not agree with them, right? When it helps. So we get just before where he says, well, we find out that humans are not evil. Maybe they're good. I disagree with that. I think that we all get away with what we can get away with at the end of the day. That's what I think. Just like how we would like to think we're better than we are. And just like how we were all selfish in a lot of ways, not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I mean, selfish in terms of course, you're going to look after your own people and your own family before other people. So the fact that people try to act like we all care so much about everybody's problems, I'm a bit like, let's not lie to ourselves. Let's be honest. We all do care about those others, but we also are going to prioritize ourselves. So, but according to him, man isn't evil, which again, we're going to like that because that's going to make you feel good. Like, okay, no, I'm good. Like, I'm not evil. Okay, maybe I'm good. And maybe there's something else added. Oh my gosh, that makes sense. It helps to pander to this nature of us as humans that I observe of always wanting to think of ourselves as better than we actually are. And it also, again, takes away from our sense of responsibility for creating our own destruction, which is exactly what the Bible is actually saying with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of life. Even if you just think about that in a metaphorical sense, it's literally saying you have the option to choose life or to choose the knowledge of good and evil, which doesn't say success. It doesn't say winning. And it actually arrives at death. But you'd rather do that. Why? Because we think we know what we're doing, because that's who we are as humans. And all I have to say is let's just look at the world and see how that turned out. So yeah, so he's now suggesting, assuming this T-O-H, is this Borneo shaman's version of a demon. So let's see if it's in the little definitions. Yep. Oh, yes. It's as if I knew this already. Listen to what it says. This toe, that again, just to clarify what that is, these Borneo shamans are believing that this toe entered into him, which directs him to do evil things. So we're good, but these toe, whatever they are, here we go. An agent of the spiritual world, in primitive cultures considered an evil spirit and blamed for disasters such as crop failures, sickness, and death. Ironically, and this is one of the backwards things, is that a lot of the destruction that you see today, historically, people would be doing all of these rituals and some things to these gods, which they'll be like the god of rain or the god of fertility or the god of health, in order to avoid these things from happening, right? But they're actually causing them in the first place, because it'll be like in those scenarios when historically all over the world, they're trying to appeal to the god of health, they'll have to sacrifice 100 babies. So do you see what I'm saying? Like, you can't make this stuff up. This was a discovery almost as mad as some of the patients on hand. That's a bit rude. He's saying this was a discovery almost as mad as some of the patients on hand. That is rude. But the thing to do was try to measure and classify demons. Oh, is there a need to do that? Strange work for an engineer and mathematician. Yes, I agree. But it was found that demons could be classified. There were several demons in each patient, but there were only a few classes of demons. Now, again, I'm already wondering, like, actually, let's go and look for the definition of demon. Because what is he saying is a demon here? And how are we classifying them? And where's the classification of what a demon is what I would like to know. If anybody wants me to do like a biblical thing on that, we can actually do that as well. Okay, demon. Aha! Let's hear this. Oh, are we surprised? Exactly like what I was saying. It says, in ancient Greece, a supernatural being of a nature between that of gods and men, including the souls or ghosts of the dead persons, such as of heroes, thought of as godlike, an evil spirit or devil, especially one thought to possess a person. Exactly what I just said. Okay, interesting that he classified it just in ancient Greece, because it's not all about Greece. This is another thing. I have a lot of these people who came from the West, like, really think that there's nothing else in the world that can explain things, and this whole anyway, whatever. Who cares? Strange word. Okay, so there were audio demons, sub-audio demons, visio demons, interior demons, exterior demons, ordering demons, directing demons, critical demons, apathetic demons, angry demons, bored demons, and curtain demons who merely occluded things. The last seemed the most common. Looking into a few minds established soon that it was difficult to find anyone who didn't have some of these demons. Oh my gosh, I agree with this, but hold on, bear with. Sorry guys, so I just wanted to pick up this book. It's called Pigs in a Parlor. And if you guys want me to do this, I can read about it. It's a book that's about deliverance. The Practical Guide to Delivering Yourself from Demons. Really good book. And it's one of the reasons that I believe in deliverance. And it talks a lot about how demons enter, where demons are in the Bible. If anybody wants me to do something, I can do something alongside this Scientology with this book as well, because it's interesting how he's classified the demons, because it's quite different. If you guys want to hear the difference in like this, my example here. Let's see. You've got, where does it say? They've got a whole page of like the different types of demons. Anyways, guys, if you guys want to go through this is really interesting, because yeah, demonic groupings, page 125. Yeah, you guys tell me if you want to go through more of this. There's a lot of demons here. And you guys, yeah, we won't even read this today, because this is a Scientology video and this would be crazy if we start reading that. But I'm just bringing up what L. Ron Hubbard is saying, because this is the point. And this is something that we have to do in life, especially since this channel is called The Winning Team and we're winners. As any intelligent person, you have to be able to like consider all the arguments. So that's why I'm reading this stuff, because I'm like, I'm genuinely going to, I'm not just going to take people's word for it automatically that, oh, L. Ron Hubbard is this or Scientology is that. Now, observably, the products of what they do shows that. But also, like, let's actually read the literature as for what it is. And then also when we do that, let's read other literatures as well. And let's see where the truth is, because I believe the truth will hold up for itself. So anyway, yeah, here we go. He says, bored demons and curtain demons who merely occluded things. The last seemed the most common. Looking into a few minds established soon that it was difficult to find anyone who didn't have some of these demons. It was necessary to set an optimum brain. That brain would be postulated, subject to change. It would be the combined best qualities of all brains studied. It would be able to visualize in color and hear with all tones and sound present, all memories necessary to thought. It would think without talking to itself, thinking in concept and conclusions rather than words. It would be able to imagine visually in color anything it cared to imagine and hear anything it cared to imagine it would hear. It was discovered eventually that it could also imagine smells and tactiles, but this did not enter into the original. Finally, it would know when it was recalling and know when it was imagining. So we're talking again back to this mind malarkey. Now, for the purposes of analogy, here we go again with this. It was necessary to go back to the electronic computer idea conceived in 1938. Circuits were drawn up for the visio and audio recall, for color and tone recall, for imagination, visio and audio creation, and color and tone creation. Then we were drawn the memory bank circuits. All this was fairly easy at this time, since some extensive work had been done on this in the 30s. I just want to also point out quickly, when you're hearing this, I want you to understand that as time goes on, right, I feel like this is just my opinion, but like you would think that technology would be further than it is. And I believe there's a lot of gatekeeping of technologies. There's a lot of things that people are doing, and a lot of people who are more capable and just gatekeeping silently stuff that would actually, because if that's what they were doing in 1938, imagine what they're able to do now, is all I'm saying. With this diagram, further circuits were set up. The optimum brain was a plain circuit. To this were added the demon circuits. It was found by very ordinary electronics one could install every kind of demon that had been observed. Gosh, I love it. Sorry, I'm just laughing because it's like he's literally going so hard to try and like basically get you to believe in demons, but get it to be in such a way where like we're not talking about like the way that this book I've just mentioned will talk about it, which is completely different language, because no one's going to believe this and people are already going to be like, why are you bringing up that? That's got nothing to do with Scientology. But instead, and this is why I say he's a genius, instead of doing that, he says the same stuff, but he just says it in a way that sounds scientific because we're talking about circuits and the brain being an optimum machine and so on and so forth. I don't know if you guys, any of you watched The Matrix, because that's also what's coming into my mind as I'm reading this. It was found, it was found that very ordinary electronics, one could install every kind of a demon that had been observed. The demons, since none of them consented to present themselves for a proper examination as demons, were, it concluded, installed in the brain in the same way one would install a circuit in the optimum brain. But as there was just so much brain, it was obvious that these electronic demons were using parts of the optimum brain and that they were no more competent than the optimum brain inherently was. This was more postulating. All one wanted was a good result. If this hadn't worked, something else would have been tried. This is interesting. I'm going to give my thoughts on this in a second because we've only got a paragraph left. Because he's actually saying the same thing about demons. That is what the Bible's saying. If you can imagine. Thus the solution was entered upon. While the human brain is a shade too wonderful an instrument to be classified with anything as clumsy as contemporary electronics, as marvelous as modern electronics are, the analogy stands. Oh, yes. So remember, and this is what I was laughing before, because whenever he's about to say something, a lot of times he's about to say something that's going to be hard for people to hear. He uses it as an analogy. So you can't accuse him of trying to doing what I might say and being like, well, I believe that this is God and this is whatever. You might be like, well, I'm going to discredit that. Fair enough. You as your intelligent, critical mind should do that. But what he does instead is he still does the same thing because he puts it out there and he just calls it an analogy or an idea, even though he's basing these analogies, not as analogies, he's using them to explain what he's actually thinking. Because he does believe that the brain is the optimum machine and he does believe that the optimum brain is a plain circuit. So anyway, whatever. The solution was entered upon. While the human brain, we already did that. The analogy still stands. It stands as an analogy. The whole science would hang together brightly now with that analogy, but it serves in this place. There are no demons, no ghosts and ghouls or toes, but there are aberrative circuits. So it was reasoned it was a postulate and then it became something more. My gosh, okay. So then he's got this little quote here. It was found that very ordinary electronics, one could install every kind of a demon that had been observed. And there's a little image here. I actually like the style of these images, even though I don't like what he's saying. So that's all of chapter 3. Now, what I want to say, I feel like I should do a whole thing on demons now, reading through this, because what he's essentially saying is he's trying to say there's some kind of virus in the system that is this optimum machine that's stopping it from working. We already know why he's doing that, because he's building up to tell us that he needs to remove our reactive mind. But what he's doing is along the way, he's covering his bases of making everything sound super scientific, and anything that is outside of science is just a flawed X theory not to be trusted in, these shamans and these witch doctors, but they were onto something, but they weren't quite correct, right? With the whole hypnotism stuff. Or he's always backing up to, so how can we scientifically look at this? Well, he's concluding here, we can accept that there are these programs that are essentially like viruses to the human mind, right? And so what are we going to do about removing them? Because we've looked at the idea that are people evil? No, they are good. So something is ruining them, like how a virus would ruin a computer system. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what I think is so intelligent, because the thing about L. Ron Hubbard, and this is the thing, he understands humans. He understands the human mind. He understands that we want to think of ourselves as better than we are. He understands that we feel safer and more comfortable and easier to accept something that seems like it's practical, right? Because he keeps saying, this is weird for an engineer and mathematician. It's like, yeah, I know, because I'm also a mathematician and a scientist myself, bro. And actually, I don't find this hard to understand, because it's as simple as what he's saying. I think he's absolutely right. When he was saying in here about these demons that don't seem to want to speak when they're not spoken to, or when they don't want to or get involved, which first of all should be a flaw, because how can you believe in something you can't even evaluate properly? If they're not participating, then how are we even evaluating them in the first place? So that's step one. But step number two, that goes to support the argument for Jesus Christ, because the whole point of Jesus is he is the only one with authority against demons. That's the whole point. That's where the whole obsession with Jesus and being God and being the most powerful name above all names with Christianity. That's why it's so important, because yes, the demons don't have to respond. They don't have to do anything that they don't have the right, that you don't have the rights to ask them for. That's why when people get involved in all this airy-fairy spiritual stuff, they lose their mind, because you're working in a jurisdiction that you don't have the qualifications to be operating in. Like, you're trying to talk to powers that are more understanding of what's going on here than you are. You have no rights. You have the rights with Christ. That's when your rights are there, because he is the ultimate power of all powers when it comes to these demons. So yeah, of course, L. Ron Hubbard says we can't talk to the demons. Yeah, because you're already God yourself, mate. You haven't got no space for the Lord. And it's just funny, because this always happens to me. Every time I look at the science, everything points back to God for me. Everything points back to God. Everything points back to God of the Bible and how he's explaining it. Because that's what he's saying here. There's these viruses. Yeah, I agree. I believe that demons exist. In the same way he's saying that they come and they corrupt the system, the circuit. You have a plain circuit with these things that are coming in to like corrupt the circuit, basically. It's the same way that demons operate inside of us. I've said this to you guys before. And that's how I believe. And he's even saying it affects the ability of the circuit itself, the original plain circuit, which is our brain or whatever, how it thinks and what it does. It's exactly the same thing that the Bible is saying. It's exactly the same thing that God is saying, that, you know, the demons look at us as a house in order to reside in. That's why another word for demons that is used in the original Hebrew and Greek, ironically that he mentioned Greece, is disembodied spirits without a body, in order to be able to inhabit. So it's like he's literally saying the same thing, but he's saying it in such a way where, like, we're not going to really focus on any other option other than, like, well, what do we do? And it's interesting to me that he's immediately gone next to personality as the next point that he wants to make. The next chapter is called The Basic Personality. And that's interesting to me, because I've told you guys about the stages of being possessed by a demon as I understand them, right? Or being defiled, which is a great teaching that I heard. And it talked about it in this term. And I'm interested to see if this is where we'll go. But basically, the guy was saying, who was doing this message, that we have 4 stages of defilement. The first stage is when you're in your perfect state, which again is in agreement with what L. Ron Hubbard is saying. This is what's crazy. It's in agreement with what L. Ron Hubbard is saying. So you're in a perfect state. So this is us, our optimum brain, our optimum computing machine brain. And then we get contaminated. So something else that isn't you has come in to contaminate what's going on here. Then the next stage is contagious. So now you're passing that on to others. And the 4th stage is corrupt, which corrupt is when you become, that thing becomes you. So for example, the example I would give of this is anger. At first, you might not be somebody who ever gets angry. Then you might become contaminated where for some reason you're more irritable. This is how demons work, right? The longer that these things stay there without being dealt with, you then become contagious. You're now an angry person around others, and now you're causing other people to be more angry. You're contaminating them. And then it gets to the corruption where you completely forget that you were never an angry person, but now you just refer to yourself as, I'm just an angry person now. But that's how the demons work. That's exactly what demons work. That's exactly how they do their work. And demon, I think, is such a dirtier word than what it really is. You know, to me, it's just, they're disembodied spirits. They don't have good intentions for us. Right? It doesn't mean you're some kind of weird exorcism thing. And that's why I think in these weird exorcism movies, they always have to make it look weird, because then nobody ever wants to talk about demons, because that's the first thing that they're thinking is what they saw on The Exorcist. You know what I'm saying? When in reality, the chances are if you're seeing a demon in somebody, it's more likely to do with day-to-day normal things that you might not attribute to a demon, but are actually the workings of a demon. And that's why I think it's interesting that he's now going to talk about personality, because again, it's like what I just said, we're at the fully contaminated stage, the corrupt stage, where now this thing has taken over, like how a virus has now taken over your computer, and now it's just a part of you now. And so you even claim that thing, just like how he's saying, now we're going on to the basic personality. So I'm very interested to see what that's going to be about. Stay tuned. I probably will record that video now as well, so that I don't lose my thought track. Tell me what you guys think. I know it's a bit wild for me to get so much into like the biblical stuff, but I just feel like while we're all throwing everything out there, I may as well throw out there what I understand. And if you guys agree, that's great. If you don't, that's also great. Share your own thoughts. But I just think, like, if we're going to address things, if we're going to address any type of belief systems, we have to be putting things up against each other. The same way he is, the same way he's saying, and it's interesting how he ends off with, so after having said all of that, he's ended with, there are no demons, no ghosts and ghouls or toes, but there are aberrative circuits. So it was reasoned, it was a postulate, and then it became something more. So we don't know what they are exactly yet. It's not been specified just yet. We know that it's something that has been seen to be called all these other things like demons and ghouls and all that. but we at least know that there is an entity that is behaving in a certain way that is consistent with all of these thinkings. So what is it? And how is it affecting us, and how is it making us not good? Anyways, guys, if life's a game, let's play to win. Stay tuned. I hope you're enjoying this. Let me know your thoughts. God bless you all, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.